In today's episode, we're looking at the 6 worst deaths caused by pranks ever recorded, from a birthday surprise that sent a man over a terrace wall to a harmless-looking spider prank that ended with consequences no one expected. It was March 14, 2019. An afternoon sun cast sharp shadows across a shopping plaza in Sacramento, California. Shoppers moved between stores in the outdoor plaza that had 42 stores around a central courtyard. Marcus Diaz was 26 years old and worked as a social media content creator in Sacramento. He had traveled to the plaza with his friend Jessica on a Thursday afternoon to film a prank video for his online channel. His friend later described him as someone who viewed public spaces as stages and pedestrian reactions as performance material when denied caution. The prank was a fake kidnapping reaction test meant to capture how strangers reacted to a staged abduction. Marcus planned to grab his friend Jessica and drag her toward a van while she screamed for help as 2 others filmed from different angles. The scene was expected to last only a few minutes before being revealed to anyone who stepped in. Marcus and his team arrived at 2:15 in the afternoon on a Thursday. Jessica wore a bright yellow jacket to make her visible on camera. The 2 camera operators positioned themselves at opposite ends of the courtyard with their equipment ready. 41-year-old Robert Patterson was at the plaza that afternoon shopping for groceries. Robert had served 8 years in the military as an infantry soldier and had completed 2 deployments overseas before returning to civilian life in 2012. He worked as a construction supervisor and lived in Sacramento with his wife and 2 children. Robert was walking out of a hardware store when he heard Jessica screaming as Marcus dragged her towards the van. Her shouts were loud and clearly audible across the plaza. Several shoppers turned to look. Some stopped walking, and a few took out their phones. Robert did not see the camera. He immediately ran toward them. Marcus was focused on the performance and did not notice Robert approaching from behind until Robert reached him. Robert grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and pulled him away from Jessica with significant force, causing Marcus to lose his grip and stumble. Marcus, confused, tried to explain, but Robert interpreted the explanation as excuses and moved to restrain him. Marcus pushed back against Robert's hold, trying to create space to explain the prank, but Robert responded with a defensive strike to Marcus's chest and followed with a takedown maneuver that brought both men to the pavement. Marcus landed hard on his back with Robert's weight on top of him. The impact knocked the air from his lungs and caused immediate pain in his upper back. One of the camera operators reached them within seconds, saying it was a prank and pointing to his camera. Robert, hearing the explanation, released his hold on Marcus and stepped back. Plaza security arrived 2 minutes later, followed by police. By this time, Marcus was sitting on a bench with clear signs of distress, reporting chest pain and difficulty breathing. An ambulance was called, and paramedics evaluated Marcus on scene. He had visible bruising, an elevated heart rate, and shallow breathing. At the medical center, imaging revealed 2 fractured ribs and a punctured lung that required immediate treatment with a chest tube. A second procedure addressed internal bleeding. Despite treatment, Marcus's condition worsened overnight as complications from the lung injury led to respiratory failure. He died early the following morning. Investigators later determined that the blunt force impact during the takedown caused the chest trauma that proved fatal. Robert Patterson was questioned but not charged, as authorities concluded he had acted in response to what he believed was an active abduction. It was June 8, 2017. An evening light spread across an event center in Austin, Texas. Cars filled the parking lot as guests arrived, carrying wrapped gifts and balloons through the entrance. Daniel Morrison was 31 years old and worked as an architect at a commercial design firm in Austin. He had lived in the city for 9 years after moving there for his first job out of graduate school. His friends later described him as someone who enjoyed pranks and didn't mind being the target of jokes when things stayed lighthearted. The group of 23 friends had planned the surprise party for over a month. The event center was a private venue used for parties, weddings, and business gatherings. It had a main hall inside and an outdoor terrace that looked out over the city. The terrace was 40 feet long and 30 feet wide. A low stone wall ran along the outer edge and stood 3 feet high. Past the wall, the ground dropped down at a steep angle for about 18 feet before it flattened into a garden area below. The slope was covered with decorative rocks, small bushes, and small lights built into the ground. Daniel's birthday party was organized by his wife, Lauren Morrison, and his close friend group. The surprise element was carefully planned. Daniel believed he was attending a casual dinner with Lauren, but 35 guests were hiding in the event hall. 33-year-old Ryan Caldwell was part of the friend group and had known Daniel for 14 years. Ryan had a reputation for physical comedy and light pranks. At previous gatherings, Ryan had jumped out from hiding spots, pulled chairs away, or playfully shoved friends in low-risk situations. These pranks had always been received as harmless fun. On the evening of the party, guests arrived between 6:30 and 7. Ryan, along with 2 other friends, volunteered to wait on the outdoor terrace to add an extra element of surprise by appearing from an unexpected direction. Once Daniel and Lauren arrived at 7:17. As they approached the hall entrance, the lights inside came on, and guests revealed the surprise. Daniel reacted with genuine excitement and laughter. Ryan and the 2 other friends heard the commotion from the terrace and decided to enter through the terrace door to add to the moment. As Daniel reached the terrace doorway, Ryan placed both hands on Daniel's shoulders and pushed forward with a level of force he later said was similar to previous pranks. The push was intended as a surprise, causing Daniel to step forward unexpectedly. Daniel's position at the moment of the push placed him directly in line with the open terrace door. Rather than regaining balance inside the hall, his momentum carried him through the doorway and onto the terrace. His momentum carried him across the terrace surface toward the stone wall. Daniel's hips struck the stone at an awkward angle. The impact, combined with his forward momentum, caused his upper body to pivot over the wedge. He tried to grab the top of the wall to stop himself, and he managed to grip the stone surface briefly, but his weight and momentum were already beyond the balance point. His hands slipped from the stone, and he fell over the wall onto the slope. Daniel tumbled down the 18-foot slope, unable to control his descent. His body struck the decorative rocks and metal lighting fixtures multiple times during the fall. He came to rest at the bottom of the slope in the garden area, lying on his side and motionless. Paramedics arrived, and Daniel was unconscious with visible trauma to his head, neck, and back. He was then transported to the hospital. At the hospital, imaging revealed a fractured skull, traumatic brain injury, 3 fractured cervical vertebrae, and internal bleeding. Daniel was taken directly to surgery, but the severity of the head trauma resulted in massive brain swelling that could not be controlled. Daniel died during surgery due to traumatic brain injury and cervical spine fracture. Ryan Caldwell was questioned and provided a statement describing the push as a prank that had gone wrong. Daniel's family later filed a wrongful death lawsuit, which was settled privately. The event center was temporarily closed following the incident. Management later banned surprise entrances and physical pranks at all events. It was October 22, 2020, and afternoon crowds moved through a transit station in Portland, Oregon. People checked their phones and sat on benches as speakers announced arriving trains and buses. Tyler Bennett was 19 years old and attended a local university where he studied business. He used social media apps often and watched popular videos and challenges. His roommate later said Tyler wanted attention online and saw strangers as content for his videos. The transit station was a busy stop where buses and trains picked up passengers. About 12,000 people used it each weekday. The station was built in 2004 and had different levels connected by stairs and escalators. The challenge Tyler wanted to film was called the Scare Cam Challenge. The idea was to jump out at strangers or make loud noises while filming their reactions. The trend had started 3 weeks earlier and spread fast online with millions of views. College students and young adults did it to get more followers on their accounts. Tyler had decided to film his own version at the transit station during peak commuter hours. His plan was straightforward. He would hide near the stairway entrance on the elevated platform and jump out to startle commuters as they reached the top of the stairs. He brought his phone mounted on a handheld stabilizer to ensure steady footage and arrived at the station at 4:30 in the afternoon during the evening rush when foot traffic was heaviest. Tyler positioned himself behind a support column near the top of the stairway where arriving passengers would not see him until they stepped onto the platform. He activated his phone's camera, started recording, and waited for targets. Over the next 15 minutes, he jumped out at 6 different people as they came up the stairs. Most reacted with visible surprise and startled expressions. Some reacted with nervous laughter as he indicated the situation was a prank for social media. At 4:47, 65-year-old Margaret Chen was climbing the stairs to the platform. Margaret was a retired accountant who had worked for over 30 years before retiring and lived in Southeast Portland. That afternoon, she was traveling across town to the hospital to see her son and meet her first grandchild, who had been born that morning. She had no known history of heart disease and was considered in good health for her age. At the moment she stepped onto the platform, Tyler jumped out from behind the column directly into her path, yelling loudly and throwing his arms up in an exaggerated gesture. His phone camera captured the entire moment. Margaret reacted instantly, gasping as her body jerked backward. The sudden fright triggered an acute stress response that disrupted her heart rhythm. She lost balance, collapsed onto the platform, and struck her head on the concrete before losing consciousness. Paramedics arrived and transported Margaret to the hospital, where doctors treated her for severe head trauma and cardiac instability. She was pronounced dead at 5:32. Investigators later determined that a stress-induced cardiac arrhythmia combined with blunt force head injury from the fall led to her death. Tyler was arrested and gave a statement to police. 8 months later, a jury found him guilty of involuntary manslaughter. After the incident, the Transit Authority banned all prank filming and increased staff monitoring during peak hours. The footage recorded that afternoon was seized as evidence and never made public. It was September 5th, 2016, at a residential home in Bakersfield, California. The 2-story house sat on a quiet suburban street with few cars passing by. Eric Sullivan was 28 years old and worked as an electrician in Bakersfield. He had lived in his 2-story house for 4 years. His girlfriend, Melissa Park, was 26 years old and worked as a teacher. They had been together for 2 years. Eric's younger brother, Jordan, was visiting from Phoenix for the weekend. Eric and Jordan had pranked each other since they were kids. Each brother tried to make his pranks bigger and better than the last one. The prank Eric and Melissa planned had taken 3 weeks to prepare. The idea was to make Jordan think a stalker was watching the house. They would leave fake clues, make strange things happen, and build up fear over the whole weekend. On Sunday, they would tell Jordan it was all fake. Eric and Melissa made fake photos that showed a dark figure outside the house. They wrote threatening letters, and they planned to make scary phone calls at specific times during the weekend. Jordan arrived Friday evening at 6:30. The prank began Saturday morning when Eric showed Jordan a fake photograph of someone in their backyard at night. Throughout Saturday, Eric and Melissa added elements: a threatening letter, mysterious phone calls, and moved household items. By evening, Jordan was visibly unsettled and suggested calling the police, but Eric dismissed the idea. That night, Eric staged sounds outside at 2 in the morning. Jordan woke to scratching noises and came out looking clearly frightened. Sunday morning, Eric escalated with more fake evidence. Jordan became increasingly anxious and insisted they contact authorities, but Eric delayed. At 2 in the afternoon on Sunday, Eric decided to add the final major escalation. He told Jordan that he and Melissa were going to the hardware store to buy better locks and asked Jordan to stay at the house and call immediately if anything suspicious happened. Jordan agreed reluctantly. Eric and Melissa did go to the hardware store, but their actual plan was to have their friend, 30-year-old Keith Yamamoto, appear at the house While they were gone, Keith was instructed to dress in dark clothing and wear a ski mask, appear briefly in the backyard where Jordan would see him, then quickly leave. This would create the climax before Eric and Melissa returned to reveal the prank. Keith arrived at the house and entered through the back gate, which Eric had left unlocked for him. Jordan was in the living room, which had large windows with a clear view of the backyard. Jordan saw Keith through the window. His reaction was immediate fear. He called 911, reporting an intruder wearing a mask. Jordan then made a fatal decision. Eric kept a handgun secured in a safe in the master bedroom closet for home protection. Jordan, who was already familiar with the safe from prior visits, retrieved the gun, checked that it was loaded, and returned to the living room. He unlocked the back door and stepped onto the patio. Moments later, Keith was struck by 2 gunshots and collapsed. Jordan ran to Keith and pulled off the ski mask, recognizing him as Eric's friend. Police and paramedics arrived within 3 minutes. Paramedics began treatment, but Keith died at the scene from his wounds. Jordan was arrested and gave a statement describing the weekend of staged threats. Eric and Melissa arrived home to find police surrounding the house, and Eric later provided evidence of the planned prank. Jordan was charged with manslaughter, and the case concluded with a plea agreement in which he received a suspended sentence after the court determined he had acted out of genuine fear created by deliberate deception. It was April 3rd, 2021, at the offices of a production company in Seattle, Washington, when a workplace prank resulted in fatal consequences. The company was a media production firm that created training videos and corporate communications for clients in healthcare and technology sectors. 27-year-old Amanda Price worked as a production assistant and had been with the company for 3 years. She was organized, detail-oriented, and well-liked by her colleague. Amanda had a severe peanut allergy that she had managed since childhood. The allergy was life-threatening, and she carried 2 EpiPen auto-injectors at all times, one in her purse and one in her desk drawer at work. Her co-workers were aware of her condition. The company was producing a training video about emergency medical responses. The script included a scene demonstrating proper use of an epinephrine auto-injector during an allergic emergency. For the scene, the crew used a non-functional training auto-injector from a medical supply company. The prop EpiPen looked identical to a real one, but contained no medication and had no needle. The packaging clearly marked it for training use only. That afternoon, Jason Wright and Sarah Chen were organizing props in the equipment. Both were crew members working on the video. They began joking about pranking Amanda, and Jason suggested actually swapping Amanda's real EpiPen with the prop as a prank. They would tell her later that day and watch her reaction, then immediately return her real one. Later in the day, while Amanda was in a meeting, Jason and Sarah went to her desk. They opened her drawer and replaced her backup EpiPen with the prop. At 4:15, both were called into an unexpected meeting that lasted 90 minutes. By the time it ended, Amanda had left for the day with the fake prop EpiPen. Jason and Sarah decided they would return the real EpiPen first thing next morning, not considering it urgent since Amanda had another EpiPen in her purse. Amanda stopped at a grocery store on her way home and bought some crackers. She did not realize the crackers had been produced in a facility that also processed peanuts, and investigators later noted the possibility of trace peanut contamination. Within minutes, Amanda began experiencing allergic reaction symptoms. Her throat felt tight, breathing became difficult, and she developed hives. She reached for her purse, but realized she had left it in her car earlier that evening. With her breathing worsening, Amanda ran to get her backup medication. She removed the safety cap from the backup injector and pressed it firmly against her thigh, expecting the familiar needle click. Nothing happened. She tried again. Still nothing. The prop EpiPen had no needle and no medication. Amanda's allergic reaction progressed rapidly. She managed to dial 911 at 9:41, but she could not speak clearly due to throat swelling. The dispatcher heard labored breathing and immediately dispatched paramedics. Paramedics arrived at 9:53. They found her unconscious on the floor. Paramedics began resuscitation efforts, administered epinephrine, and transported her to the hospital. Despite aggressive treatment, including additional epinephrine, IV fluids, and steroids, Amanda had experienced prolonged oxygen deprivation before treatment began. She was pronounced dead at 10:36. Police investigated the next morning. Jason and Sarah confessed to the prank and were arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter. The jury found them guilty. Jason received 8 years in prison and Sarah received 7 years. The company implemented strict policies prohibiting prop handling near personal medical items. It was November 12, 2018, at an apartment complex in Denver, Colorado. The unit sat at the edge of the complex with a small front porch and a shared pathway. Martin Martinez was 32 years old and worked as a graphic designer in Denver. He shared the apartment with his longtime friend Ethan Torres, who was 29 years old and worked as an accountant. They had lived together for 3 years. Ethan Torres had a severe fear of spiders called arachnophobia. He had been afraid of spiders since he was a child. Friends and family all knew about his fear. Even seeing one spider would upset Ethan badly and cause him to panic. Martin liked to pull elaborate pranks on people. He decided to use Ethan's spider phobia for a prank he was planning. His idea was to fill Ethan's bedroom with fake rubber spiders while Ethan was out of the apartment. Martin thought that after Ethan got scared at first, he would see the spiders were fake and then everyone would laugh about it. Martin ordered 4,000 realistic rubber spiders over 2 weeks. He planned to deploy them on Sunday while Ethan was visiting family. Ethan left Saturday morning and planned to return Sunday evening. On Sunday at 2 o'clock, Martin began placing spiders throughout Ethan's bedroom on the bed, dresser, walls, and floor, adding dim lighting and a lit candle nearby to create a creepy atmosphere. Ethan arrived that evening. He greeted everyone and asked what they were doing there. Martin told him they were just spending time together and suggested Ethan put his bag in his bedroom. Martin and the friends watched as Ethan opened his bedroom door. His eyes registered thousands of spiders covering every surface. His reaction was instant and extreme. He screamed and stumbled backward in pure panic. Martin and the friends expected fear, followed by laughter, but Ethan's phobia overrode rational thinking. Ethan ran toward the living room, shouting incoherently. Martin tried to explain they were fake, but Ethan was not processing language. In his panic, Ethan's arm swung outward as he turned, striking the coffee table and knocking a candle place to create a creepy atmosphere. The candle tipped over and fell against a lightweight synthetic curtain. Fed by wax, smoke began to rise. Martin ran to the kitchen, but had no fire extinguisher. In his panic, he grabbed a dish towel. Ethan froze in place, unable to process what action to take. The friends tried to pull him toward the door, but he resisted, his body rigid. Smoke thickened rapidly as synthetic materials burned. The fire alarm activated at 7:10. Martin filled a pot with water. By the time he returned, the fire had engulfed half the sofa and was spreading fast. Ethan, surrounded by smoke, was overcome by toxic fumes. He collapsed unconscious from smoke inhalation. Firefighters and paramedics arrived and took over resuscitation, while firefighters extinguished the fire. Ethan was transported to the hospital with severe smoke inhalation, carbon monoxide poisoning, and chemical burns in his airway. He was intubated and placed on mechanical ventilation. Despite aggressive treatment, he developed acute respiratory distress syndrome and died. Martin Martinez was arrested and charged with involuntary manslaughter. The jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison with 5 years suspended. Thanks for watching. Enjoy this video. Click more